All. This is Dr. Mobeen Sayed from drbeen.com. Welcome to one more show. I am preparing for the conference in Florida, and because of that, I have to fly on Friday morning. I have to do some bunch of work tomorrow as well. So I did the lecture a little earlier so I can get to my work again. So thank you very much for joining me early. Let's start a discussion. There is a study. This is a preprint from China, Peking University, China. What they're saying in that preprint is that they have tested the more newer variants, for example, XBB and others, and I'll show you that number in a second. And what they found was that may it be convalescent plasma, that is, people who are infected and have the plasma, or vaccinated, but with one twist. People who are infected after the vaccine. There are separate people who are not vaccinated and infected. There is a difference between their plasmas. Vaccine and infected versus infected only, no vaccine, versus vaccinated only. And then those who were given Evusheld and those who were given or the Evusheld antibodies and the bebtelovimab antibodies. This is what they tested. They found out Evusheld is almost escaped, and we already knew that Omicron has almost escaped BA5, especially Evusheld. Bebtelovimab was still potently working. That is gone as well. So the newer variants aren't responding very well to bebtelovimab. That is a loss because we don't have another antibody. And then vaccinated plasma or plasma vaccinated and then infected are also escaped, significantly escaped. And the conjecture that they have, remember, it's a preprint, it still needs to go through the peer review. It's a thorough document, huge document. The conjecture that they have, and actually they proved it, is that it is the immune imprinting, meaning somebody who gets vaccinated with the original Wuhan variant. And remember, because this paper is coming from China, they do not call it Wuhan variant, they just call it ancestor variant. So when you read it, the ancestor variant here is the Wuhan variant. So the vaccine against the original Wuhan variant or the vaccine against Omicron BA5. Although we don't have the BA5, remember the bivalent vaccine is actually BA1. So anyways, the vaccine causes immune imprinting. They proved it. And that immune imprinting is creating antibodies that are not neutralizing. And the newer variants are just simply evading them. That is the discussion. So it is an in vitro study, but the plasmas are from the people, and of course, Evusheld and bebtelovimab. So let's start with our discussion. Fairchild says confused question mark. 555 says, I just like listening to Dr. Bean talk. I don't understand much. It just calms me. All right, time to go to sleep. All right, so let's start. First of all, I did this painting yesterday. I was trying to understand if I can paint various shapes, but within a monotonous environment. And could that be done? Could I make shadows and could I make darker structures while staying within a theme of a color? And even the sky is slightly lit. So this is called Into the Distance. So with this, let's start. This is drbeen.com. In the description of this video, there is a link that shows you a one-time fee to access 900 lectures in Dr. Bean for a really, really, really inexpensive price. So you can actually look it up. And you can return it if you want. And it's a one-time fee. There is no recurrence. We do not keep your credit card to keep doing a recurrence. It's one time. All right. So with that, here is the study. As I said, it is a preprint. It is not peer reviewed. October 4 is when they posted it. Imprinted SARS-CoV-2 humoral immunity induces convergent Omicron RBD evolution. What they're saying is just this much. What they're saying is that as you vaccinate, or as is the infection, vaccine and infection even more, the antibodies that are being produced are against Wuhan type variant. And because of that, these antibodies are really not efficient to work with the newer variants. And because of that, body does respond. So let's say XBB variant has arrived in us and we are somebody who is vaccinated, we will mount a response, but that response will go mostly nowadays with XBB like variants, will just go wasted because those antibodies will not attack the RBD receptor binding domain. And I'll explain that with the diagram in a second. So that means the variant will still be able to bind to ACE2. And they did this testing as well, that the variants were able to bind to ACE2. So they were able to cause infection. But they had made even more changes. That is what they're talking here, convergent Omicron RBD evolution. So the variants were still able to bind to ACE2, but they were able to escape the antibodies. So let's quickly look at this one. They're saying continuous evolution of Omicron has led to numerous subvariants that exhibit growth advantage over BA.5. Such rapid and simultaneous emergence of variants with enormous advantage is unprecedented. The driving force and destination of such convergent evolution and its impact on humoral immunity established by vaccination and infection remains unclear. Here we Here we demonstrated that these convergent mutations can cause striking evasion of convalescent plasma. Convalescent plasma escaped, or they use the word evasion, including those from BA.5 breakthrough infection. So this is very important, BA.5 breakthrough infection. So if you're going to read this manuscript, which I have the manuscript open here as well. If you read this, please make sure that you keep an eye on the word breakthrough, because what they're trying to present is vaccine and then infection, or vaccine only and the escape of the variants. So the can cause striking evasion of convalescent plasma, including those from BA.5 breakthrough infections and existing antibody drugs, including Evusheld and bebtelovimab. So Evusheld was already kind of not working. Bebtelovimab was the potent working drug that is gone. So example, BR2, CA1, BQ11, BM111, and especially XBB are the most antibody evading strain tested, far exceeding BA.5 and approaching SARS-CoV-1 level. This is also a very interesting point. Do you know what they're saying? Okay, I'm sure that you know what they're saying. It's a rhetorical comment. SARS-CoV-1 and SARS-CoV-2 BA or Omicron lineage. SARS-CoV-1, the old one. Remember, there was SARS-CoV-1, then there was MERS-CoV, and now we have SARS-CoV-2. The difference in the receptor binding domain, and let's just talk about that for a second. As a Coolbean said that they do not understand what I'm saying, so I'm going to try to see if I can. So here is the imprinting happening. So let's see for a second. Here is the spike protein, right? So there is a complete virus attached with it. This is the spike protein. Here is a virus, right? So kind of angry virus. These are its broken teeth. Anyways, so there are multiple spikes attached to it. We know that as well. On the spike, there is the part here that causes the spike to bind with the ACE2 enzyme, correct, which is on our cells. So let's say this is our cell. It's kind of wearing a crown. Oh, it should be sad because it's ACE2 is being used now. This binding is through the receptor binding domain on the spike protein. We're talking about this. What they said was in the SARS-CoV-1 and the SARS-CoV-2 Omicron, there were about 50 amino acids that are different from each other. So imagine every amino acid is a brick that is making up these things. So about 50 of the bricks are different. Because of that, there is a difference in SARS-CoV-1 and 2. They are saying that the new variants of Omicron have made even more changes here. Enough changes that their escape from the antibodies is as much as SARS-CoV-1 escapes the SARS-CoV-2 antibodies. Meaning, imagine if I am a patient of SARS-CoV-2 or if I am vaccinated. Imagine I'm vaccinated. I got my antibodies produced against SARS-CoV-2 ancestral or Wuhan variant. Then you take my antibodies and have them attack SARS-CoV-1. And I think you would suspect that they won't really do a very good job. They're saying that the amount of escape that SARS-CoV-1 has, the newer variants are showing a similar amount of escape. So the distance of the antibodies that we are producing to the binding to the newer variants is as much as SARS-CoV-2 to SARS-CoV-1 distance. That is scary. That is scary. However, I still have a feeling that it's not necessary that this will actually mean that the sky would fall. Here is why. They think the sky would fall. And I'll show you why they think that. Here is why. There is another phenomena that I have discussed it, and that phenomena is called Prozon effect. Where is that? I believe here in this one. I have discussed this paper before. In this paper, if you search for Prozon effect, as you can see here, a strong Prozon effect was observed in sera from severe critical patients. Actually, the presence of non-neutralizing antibodies are helpful because they coat the virus in a way that virus cannot just freely tumble around and go and attach everywhere and do its job. Imagine if you are walking around in the city and there is your shoes and are tied to each other, and then the clothes are tied to or stuck with each other and so on. It becomes difficult to walk around. So same is a problem, that even if we do not have neutralizing antibodies, the non-neutralizing antibody, the binding antibodies, are still going to bind, and this little virus will have an attack of the biological complement system, and other cells would come and attack it. Plus, it would find it difficult to keep running around. So that means there are two theories, and there are two types of studies. Here is a study in front of you. This study says that actually, if you have binding antibodies, it is good and it prevents from severe outcomes. Then here is a study that we are discussing today that says if we have more binding antibodies and less neutralizing antibodies, then we're going to have a new SARS-CoV-3 situation. So you'd see both. The reality is when this infection occurs is when we would actually find out what will happen. So that means don't panic yet, but be aware that the newer variants are escaping and much more. So here, then they say, To delineate the origin of the convergent evolution, we determined the escape mutation profiles and neutralization activity of monoclonal antibodies isolated from BA2 and BA5 breakthrough infections, convalescents. So they said we wanted to understand where is the change in the new variants? Where is the mutation? So let's say this is a whole spike protein. Where are they making their changes, these new variants? And it turned out they're trying to converge their changes. And really, they don't have a brain, so they're not really trying to converge. They're just selected. So those variants are selected that have convergences on RBD, such convergent of mutation, such mutations that they can still bind with ACE2, but they can escape the antibodies. And I have actually discussed this phenomena once before as well. This video, immune imprinting mechanism and discussion. So I've done this. There is another video I have done a few months ago or even a year ago. That was the original antigenic sin and the possibilities. So if you like, please watch them. This link is in the description as well. Okay, so back here. Then they say, moreover, we demonstrated that as few as 5 additional, so this is the scary part, but this is their conjecture. Immune imprinting they proved in vitro, and I'll read that part to you. Now they're talking about what is going to happen. And so this is not necessary that it will happen. What they said was, and this is also not necessary that it will not happen, right? So we don't know. Moreover, we demonstrated that as few as 5 additional convergent mutations based on BA5 or BA275 could completely evade most plasma samples, including those from BA5 breakthrough infection, while retaining sufficient ACE2 binding affinity. This is their conjecture that the new variants have reached a point that if they have 5 more changes, they're going to become SARS-CoV-3. The current antibodies will not work, current vaccines will not work, vaccine and infection antibody produced will not work because of antibody imprinting. So now the question would be, how about newly infected? And for newly infected, it's going to be the same. That is, if a newly infected, a person who's not vaccinated, not infected before, they get infected today with BA5 or BA2 or whatever, it's a new thing for them. Similarly, if they are infected with XBB, it is a new thing for them. They are going to mount a response in the proper way, and that is that couple of days they would try to understand their innate system, and then 5 days to 10 days their antibody system would produce antibodies and keep them up. So, and the antibodies that will be produced are going to be more targeted towards the new RBD. It doesn't matter how many mutations are on it, because for this person, this RBD is just first time exposure, right? So for a non-vaccinated person who's becoming infected for the first time, other than the risk of severity, which I cannot say what will be the risk of severity, they did not discuss it, it's an in vitro study. So barring the understanding of the risk of severity, the body's response will be normal. However, take me, I'm immunized, vaccinated. I actually had COVID as well afterwards. When I get infected with XBB, for example, then my body may select those B cells, memory B cells, that are making antibodies against a part of the spike protein that has actually mutated. So I would have a more risk. Once again, the question is what will happen? That is not known. The severity is not known. They're not talking about severity. They're just talking about the escape. So then they said, these results suggest that the current herd immunity meaning immunity that we have developed, whichever way, vaccine, infection, vaccine plus infection, and BA5 vaccine boosters may not provide sufficiently broad protection against infection. So they use the word may not because, again, they cannot say what will happen to a human being when these things infect them. This is an in vitro study. Broad spectrum SARS-CoV-2 vaccine and neutralizing antibody drugs development should be high priority, and the constructed convergent mutants could serve to examine their effectiveness in advance. So this is the basic summary of it. Now I want to read some parts of the manuscript that are interesting. So if you just wanted to hear what is going on, let me summarize it again. So if you wanted to close, you could. And then I'm going to read some parts of the manuscript around the immune imprinting. So what they're saying is there are new variants. Those new variants are making more changes on RBD of their spike protein. Those changes have made them distant from Omicron, their parent, and they have become as distant as SARS-CoV-1 is distant from their parents. So they're kind of looking like they're escaping our current immunity, just as SARS-CoV-1 would escape if that infected us. That is a scary part. Then they said the possibility was that this is immune imprinting, and they proved how it was. So with this, here is a summary. Let's now go into immune imprinting. So let me just search it. So I don't waste too much of your time here. So in their PDF, this is line number 130. Immune imprinting induces converged RBD evolution. I'm going to read some part here. Similar to that reported in BA1 breakthrough infection. BA1 breakthrough infection. Breakthrough infection means somebody was vaccinated and then got BA1. Immune imprinting, or so-called original antigenic sin, is also observed in BA2 and BA5 breakthrough infection, vaccine and then infection. Post-vaccination infection with BA2 and BA5 mainly recalls cross-reactive memory B cells elicited by wild-type based vaccine, so this is a very important sentence, but rarely produce BA2, BA5 specific B cells similar to BA1 breakthrough infection. Some things that are really interesting here. Number one, you know that even the bivalent vaccine has the original Wuhan variant vaccine plus the new Omicron vaccine. And I remember when FDA was, that debrief meeting was happening 8 hours long, and we looked at some hours of it together live. And I remember the members were saying, the committee members, that they were having to vote that should this be bivalent or monovalent, meaning should the previous Wuhan variant vaccine should stay in there and the new one be there too. And they said, yeah, we should have bivalent. And it was surprising, shocking that one of the members actually said, you know what, we feel better if we continue to have the previous one. It has been given to so many people. We trust it. We understand it. We're comfortable with it. So just add the new one on it. Do you know what they were doing actually? I was surprised then. I'm surprised now. Giving original Wuhan variant vaccines will mean that we would end up creating antibodies that are for the Wuhan variant, and the newer variants have escaped them. So now if you give bivalent, you are making sure that you are going to end up with some non-neutralizing antibodies. Think about it this way. Imagine if you gave Omicron monovalent vaccine, that means Omicron vaccine. Then Omicron will be the antibodies that are generated against. And so the newer variant may have been under capture. Although this paper shows Omicron or not, the newer variants have gone so far away from it, that doesn't even matter. But now imagine you have Wuhan variant vaccine as well. How far back the antibody type are we producing, which has nothing to do with the newer ones? And that was the strangest thing. I want to say some other word, but I'm holding my tongue. That was the strangest thing for me, to see that demonstration of science where there was no science. And they have the nerve to actually publicly broadcast their lack of science and then call it science. Anyways, so here they say that the post-vaccination infection, breakthrough infection with BA2 and BA5 mainly recalls cross-reactive memory B cells elicited by wild-type based vaccine, but rarely produces BA2, BA5 specific B cells similar to BA1 breakthrough infection. So generally, immune imprinting is causing a problem. That's one. Now, they have a lot more here for the imprinting. They actually did all these. The whole thing is immune imprinting. So they did a lot of various kind of tests to prove their point that immune imprinting is happening. Then they said did one more test, and that is they wanted to also prove that the changes that are occurring are on the RBD. So they said they did one more set of tests, accurate inference of RBD evolution hotspots. So they actually did the testing to see where the evolutions are converging. So that is also tested. And then they said convergent evolution could eventually nullify plasma neutralization. This is the conjecture. This is not what they found. This is what they are now extrapolating. They're saying if this continues to happen, then the RBD would have developed enough mutations that it can still bind with here, but no antibodies will work with it. All antibodies will become escaped. So this is the study. For me, the takeaway is vaccination with the Wuhan variant, or even now the vaccination with the Omicron, is not very decent protection against the newer variants, especially XBB. A person who is vaccinated and infected, they even have a more issue because their body first got trained by the vaccine, then it did a practice run on the Omicron. So the memory B cells that are formed are against these epitopes. And they're saying the RBD epitopes on the newer ones are escaping. The very first time infection, without knowing the risk of that, however, the very first time infection will just behave like any other first time infection with other variants. So that is a discussion. Thank you very much for being here. I have a few questions. I'm going to try to see if I can quickly answer them. Just a quick note, I will not be presenting from today now till Monday. I'm flying out on Friday. Tomorrow I'm trying to catch up on my various topics and book lecture and other things. Friday morning I'm flying out to Florida. Saturday and Sunday is a conference for FLCCC. Then Sunday night I'll come back. I think I'll take a Monday off as well. So Monday or Tuesday I'll see you again. With this, let's see. And if you would like to support this work, there are links in the description. You can support this work. There is PayPal link, there is Buy Me a Coffee link, Drbeen link. You can even become member of YouTube. Okay, let's some questions. John says, sorry, a little off topic, but just curious if you saw the press release after the COVID EU parliamentary hearing about the that Pfizer had not. People sent me some, but these were in a different language. I couldn't understand it. But some messages that I got were that Pfizer said we have not tested for transmission from one person to the other. If that is the case, let me know and I'll explain what I know. Sigrid says, just came back to chat from listening away from text. Is nucleotide protein similar enough to present variant for unvaxxed but previously infected immune system recognize appropriate response? So the similar enough to present variant for unvaccinated but previously infected. So that is an interesting question. It seems like even the previously infected will become escaped. The only thing is vaccine and breakthrough infection there is a thing called affinity maturation where the cells become even more honed, they become even more trained, so they are more trained. Okay, so let's see if there is any other question. Guys at Tesla says, are they going to claim that all the people who said these things are psychics now? Possibly. Okay, so there was one question. So Martin says, where will you live stream the FLCCC conference? I do not know if they have a plan to live stream it or not, or record it. I think they would record it and put it up on their site, but the conference itself is in a physical space, and I don't think it would have a live stream. Kini, thank you very much. He says, what do you think about PRDs in this virus? Elaborate a little more. Maria says, I had original COVID. I've been exposed multiple times to active sick people and cared for them, and I've been fine. And Maria, there are actually people who actually don't even know that they were infected. So there are asymptomatic situations too. Actually, majority are asymptomatic. Then another majority is just mild at home. And then there are some that become severe. M. Gregory says, are the mutations weakening at least? I would suspect that as the mutations are occurring on the RBD, that would cause the RBD, as much as they say that it can still bind with ACE2, the overall functioning and efficiency of that will have to be seen as well. Margaret says, thank you, Dr. Bean, safe journey. Thank you very much. Sita says, have a great trip. Thank you very much. Thank you very much to everyone with their messages. Dania, I'm so sorry. I had to do this earlier so I can continue my work. So I just, sorry, it was my bad. Okay, so thank you very much. All right, so I think this is it. With this, Broken says, will there be any updates with the great pollen variant spread? Yes, so I don't know. The current set of topics is the spike protein based pathologies and how to manage them. I'm presenting the treatment options. There are many other who are presenting treatment options, and then some are presenting epidemiology, pathogenesis, and so on. Denise says, so will bebtelovimab hurt if given and it's an escape variant? No, it can cause inflammation, which any antibody can. I don't know if it would hurt. It would just not maybe help a lot. All right. So with this, thank you very much, everyone. Please like, subscribe, and share. There are links in the description if you would like to support this work. And otherwise, I would see you on Monday or Tuesday. Bye bye for now.